24 pilots climbed into obsolete fighters on October 25th, 1944, knowing none of them would land again. 40 minutes later, an American aircraft carrier was on fire and sinking. One pilot, one plane, one kill on a target that cost a fraction of a nation's entire shipbuilding output to replace. Every build in history's game has a tier list. This one broke the meta for exactly one war. So was this build actually overpowered? Let's break down the kit. The name itself is a callback. Kamikaze means divine wind, named after the typhoons that wrecked Kublai Khan's invasion fleet twice in the 13th century, back when the Mongol build was still terrorizing every server on the map. 700 years later, Japan needed a new divine wind, because by mid-1944 its air force was in freefall. The Battle of the Philippine Sea had just wiped out most of its trained naval aviators in what American pilots nicknamed the Turkey Shoot. Saipan had fallen, putting the home islands in bomber range. The skilled player base was gone, and there wasn't time to grind new pilots to a competitive level. So Vice Admiral Takejiro Onishi respec'd the whole faction. If a pilot couldn't be trained well enough to hit a moving target and make it home, why train them to come home at all? Those 24 volunteers from the 201st Navy Air Group, the Shikishima unit, led by Lieutenant Yupio Seki, flew the first organised kamikaze mission in history during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. Their target? The escort carrier USS St. Lo. They sank it. First aircraft carrier in history sunk by a suicide attack. The build worked on its very first cast. Every other ranged attack in this game's arsenal, bombs, torpedoes, artillery, releases its payload and lets physics finish the job. The kamikaze's payload adjusts mid-flight. A pilot watching a ship turn hard to starboard turns with it. That's the entire ability. Swap a dumb weapon for a live guidance computer reacting to evasive maneuvers in real time. And the stat difference is enormous. At Okinawa, roughly 23% of kamikaze attacks hit their target. Conventional bombing runs in the same campaign landed hits about 1.4% of the time. That's not a small buff. That's a crit rate almost 17 times higher than the base attack. That alone should have made this the most broken build in the game. The devs didn't stop there. Most kamikaze pilots flew whatever obsolete Zero was sitting on the runway with bombs strapped on. But by 1945, the devs shipped a build made for nothing else. The Oka, a rocket-powered glider carried into range by a bomber, then released to ignite 3 solid-fuel rockets and close the final distance at speeds pushing 400 miles an hour, with a 1,200-kilogram warhead in the nose. Allied sailors called it the Baka, the Fool, but once it was in its terminal dive, almost nothing could catch it. On paper, the single hardest hitting, single-use ability in the entire game, the kamikaze's real damage type wasn't just the explosion, it was the dread. Ships on radar picket duty off Okinawa, the outer tripwire meant to spot incoming raids early, took the worst of it. Nearly a third of all picket vessels were sunk or damaged over the campaign, making picket duty the single most dangerous surface assignment of the entire war. If you survived one wave, you already knew there'd be another tomorrow, and the one after that. You can't out-heal a debuff that never expires. Strip away the horror and look purely at the trade. One aging airframe, one pilot, a few gallons of fuel, deployed against a target that cost a fraction of the American shipbuilding industry's annual output to replace. On paper, this is the most efficient exchange rate in the game. A low-tier, low-cost unit punching directly into a top-tier target's hit points. So 4 abilities, 1 brutal exchange rate. On paper, you're looking at the single most efficient killing machine in the game's history. But paper doesn't win wars. Here's where it falls apart. First, 0 respawns. Every other build gets to fight, survive, and level up from the experience. The kamikaze pilot gets exactly 1 engagement, ever. No accumulating skill, no veterans teaching the next generation what worked. Every mission started from scratch. Second, the skill tree got skipped. Early volunteers were experienced aviators. By 1945, Japan was so short on planes and time that new pilots got as little as 30 or 40 hours of total flight training before their one mission, a fraction of peacetime standards. A build built around human aim doesn't work when the human barely knows how to fly. Third, the Oka's cast time. That devastating ultimate had to be carried most of the way to the target by a slow, heavy bomber first. If Allied fighters intercepted the bomber before release, which they frequently did, the Oka pilot died without ever getting to use his ability at all. An ultimate that gets interrupted mid-cast isn't an ultimate, it's dead weight. Fourth and biggest, the meta patched around it. Fast. The US Navy's 5-inch guns got upgraded with the VT proximity fuse, a shell that detonated automatically near the target instead of needing a direct hit, and one destroyer squadron reported kamikaze losses to their fire, jumping 300% afterward. Radar picket lines gave up to 95 miles of early warning. Layered combat air patrols, nicknamed the Big Blue Blanket, intercepted waves before they ever reached the fleet. None of this stopped kamikazes completely, it just meant the counter-meta was catching up faster than Japan could produce new attempts. Against unescorted escort carriers early in the Philippines campaign, the build was terrifying. The St. Lo kill, plus nearly 100 more Allied ships damaged within weeks, with no counter-meta built yet. Against the picket destroyer line at Okinawa, results flipped. During the first mass Kikusui strike on April 6th and 7th, 1945, Japan committed 355 kamikaze aircraft. American destroyers Bush and Calhoun went down, several more took heavy damage, but Japan lost the entire strike force, roughly 70% of the planes involved, that same day for tactical gains that didn't move the invasion timeline at all. Against top-tier targets, the build could still land a haymaker even late in the war. On May 11, 1945, 2 kamikazes struck the fleet carrier USS Bunker Hill within 30 seconds of each other, killing nearly 400 crew and knocking one of the Navy's premier carriers out of the war entirely. Proof the build never stopped being lethal, it just stopped being sustainable. Zoom out to the full Okinawa campaign. Roughly 1,465 kamikaze sorties flown from Kyushu sank around 30 ships and damaged well over 300 more. A real serious dent in the fleet, not a war-winning one. So, was the kamikaze OP? In a single one-on-one engagement, absolutely. A crit rate 16 times higher than conventional attacks, and the ability to one-shot targets several tiers above its own weight class is a genuinely broken interaction. But overpowered builds are supposed to scale, and this one couldn't. Across the entire war, kamikaze attacks sank an estimated 34 ships for the cost of roughly 3,800 pilots and thousands of aircraft. A one-for-one resource trade a shrinking Japanese industrial base and pilot pool simply couldn't sustain, against an American shipbuilding program that kept respawning replacement hulls faster than they could be sunk. Not an OP build, just the most efficient one-shot weapon ever. And remember, even the deadliest single kill can't win a war built on respawns. If you want to see which builds actually did solve that scaling problem, the ones that won entire wars instead of single engagements, subscribe because that series is coming. Let me know in the comments which was it OP matchup you want decoded next. See you in the next one.